Rising high above the streets of San Francisco stands a gleaming tower of glass and steel, a symbol of luxury and modern engineering, home to some of the most expensive residences in the entire city. When it opened, it was celebrated as a triumph, a soaring monument to wealth and ambition, its upper floors offering breathtaking views across the bay, its residences selling for millions of dollars each. It was the kind of building that came to represent the very idea of success, a place where the fortunate few could live above the city in glittering comfort. But this magnificent tower harbors a terrible secret, one that has turned a dream address into a slow-motion nightmare. The building is sinking into the ground beneath it, and worse, it is leaning, tilting steadily to one side, and the tilt is getting faster every year. This is one of the most extraordinary and unsettling engineering stories in modern America. A skyscraper, one of the tallest and most prestigious residential towers in the city, built by respected professionals using the best of modern technology, has been quietly settling into the earth and tipping over, inch by inch, in a way that no one intended and that many struggle to fully believe. It sounds like something that should not be possible, and yet it is happening, measured and documented, the numbers growing year after year, the lean at the top of the building increasing. The whole structure slowly tilting in a way that has alarmed residents, engineers, and city officials alike. In this video, we are going to tell the full story of this sinking, tilting tower. We will explore how a building of this stature came to be in such a predicament, the hidden flaw in its very foundation that doomed it to settle and lean, and why the tilt has been accelerating rather than stabilizing. We will look at the enormous human cost, the residents who bought into a dream and found themselves trapped in a slowly leaning tower, and the extraordinary and difficult efforts to fix a problem that many thought could never be solved. And we will consider what this remarkable saga tells us about the ground beneath San Francisco and the challenges of building great towers on treacherous earth. Stay with me, because the story of how a modern skyscraper began to lean is stranger and more sobering than you might imagine. To understand the scale of what has gone wrong, you first have to appreciate what this building was meant to be, because it was, by every measure, a landmark achievement. Rising many dozens of stories into the San Francisco sky, it was one of the tallest and most striking residential towers in the city, a sleek monolith of glass that caught the light and commanded attention on the skyline. It was designed to be a premier address, a place of genuine luxury, and it delivered on that promise from the moment it opened. The residences inside were among the most coveted in the city. Wealthy buyers, including well-known figures, paid enormous sums to live there, drawn by the prestige, the amenities, and the spectacular views from high above the streets. To own a home in this tower was to have arrived, to occupy a piece of the sky in one of the world's great cities. The building represented the confidence of an era, the belief that money and modern engineering could conquer any challenge, that a soaring tower of luxury could be planted in the heart of the city and stand proud and permanent for generations. And for a time, it did exactly that. The tower opened to acclaim, its residences sold, its reputation secure. Residents moved in and began their lives high above the city, enjoying everything the building had promised. There was no visible sign of trouble, no crack in the facade, to hint at the disaster quietly unfolding far below. On the surface, the tower was everything it had been designed to be, a gleaming symbol of success. But deep beneath it, in the ground it stood upon, a slow and relentless process had already begun. A settling and a leaning that would, in time, transform this monument of luxury into a cautionary tale known around the world. The trouble first came to light when careful measurements revealed something that should not have been happening. The building was sinking into the ground at a rate far greater than anyone had anticipated. All buildings settle a little over time, a small and expected amount as the structure presses down on the earth beneath it. But this tower was settling far more than it should, sinking well beyond what its designers had predicted, and the amount kept growing. But the sinking, alarming as it was, turned out to be only part of the problem, and not even the most frightening part, because the tower was not settling evenly, straight down into the earth. It was settling more on one side than the other, and that uneven settling meant the building was tilting, leaning gradually to one side like a tree beginning to lean before it falls. Measurements taken over time showed that the top of the tower had moved measurably out of plumb, no longer standing perfectly vertical, but leaning by a significant and growing distance. A skyscraper, one of the tallest in the city, was tipping over in slow motion. As these facts became known, they set off alarm and disbelief. How could this happen to a modern building of such stature in a city with strict building codes and respected engineers? How could a tower designed and constructed with the best available knowledge be sinking and leaning in a way that seemed to belong to a bygone age? The measurements were checked and rechecked, the tilt monitored with increasing precision, and the reality became impossible to deny. The tower was sinking, it was leaning, and both were getting worse. What had been one of the most desirable addresses in the city was becoming the site of an engineering emergency, and the people who lived there found themselves at the center of a nightmare they never could have imagined when they bought their homes in the sky. To understand why this happened, we have to look down, far below the gleaming tower, into the ground it was built upon and the foundation that was supposed to hold it up. Because the root of the entire disaster lies there, in a fateful decision about how deep to anchor a very heavy building in some very difficult ground. San Francisco, in many of its neighborhoods, sits on notoriously challenging earth. Much of the city, especially the low-lying areas near the water, is underlain by soft soils, by loose sediments, and, in places, by artificial fill, ground that was created by dumping earth and rubble to extend the land. Beneath these soft upper layers, at varying depths, lies firmer material, and far below that, the solid bedrock that offers the most secure foundation of all. When you build a very tall, very heavy tower on this kind of ground, the crucial question is how to support all that immense weight so that it does not simply press down into the soft earth over time. The most secure approach for a heavy tower is to drive its foundation piles all the way down to the solid bedrock, anchoring the building to the most stable material available. But the foundation of this tower did not reach the bedrock. Instead, its supporting piles were driven down only into a dense layer of sand and firmer soil above the bedrock, relying on that layer, rather than the rock itself, to hold up the enormous weight of the tower. The idea was that this firmer layer would be strong enough to support the building. But the immense weight of the tower, pressing down on that soil over time, caused the ground to compress, and the building to settle far more than expected, and because the settling was uneven, the tower began to lean. The foundation that did not reach bedrock is the original sin of this whole saga, the fateful choice that set the sinking and the tilting in motion. One of the most disturbing aspects of this story is that the problem has not been static. The tower did not sink a certain amount, lean a certain amount, and then stop. Instead, the settling continued, and the tilt kept increasing, growing worse over time, which raised the terrifying prospect of a building that might tip further and further without a clear end in sight. Understanding why the tilt kept accelerating is key to understanding the true danger. Part of the answer lies in the nature of the soft ground itself. When heavy weight presses down on compressible soil, the compression does not necessarily happen all at once. It can continue over a long period of time as the soil slowly squeezes and the water within it is gradually forced out, a process that can go on for years. So a building on such ground can keep settling long after it is built, the ground beneath it slowly giving way under the relentless pressure. And because the tower was leaning, the weight was concentrated more heavily on the side toward which it tilted, pressing down harder on that side and causing it to settle even more, which increased the tilt further, which concentrated the weight even more. It was a vicious cycle, a self-reinforcing process in which the lean made the settling worse and the settling made the lean worse. There were also concerns about other factors that may have contributed to or accelerated the problem, including nearby construction and activities that could have affected the ground and the water within it. Whatever the precise combination of causes, the frightening reality was that the tower was not settling towards some stable resting point. It was leaning more each year, and the rate of that leaning was a source of grave concern. A skyscraper that tilts a little and then stops is a serious problem. A skyscraper that tilts more and more every year, with the rate increasing, is a potential catastrophe, and that was the specter that hung over this building and everyone connected to it. Behind the engineering measurements and the technical explanations are people, the residents who bought homes in this tower and found their lives and their fortunes bound up in its slow-motion collapse. For them, the sinking and tilting of the building has been a genuine catastrophe. Financial, emotional, and deeply personal, and their plight is one of the most sobering aspects of the entire story. Consider the position they found themselves in. They had invested enormous sums, in many cases the bulk of their wealth, to buy residences in what was supposed to be one of the safest and most prestigious buildings in the city. And then they learned that their homes were in a tower that was sinking into the ground and leaning to one side, with the tilt getting worse. The value of their properties, once among the highest in the city, was thrown into deep uncertainty, with the very real prospect that homes worth millions could become extremely difficult to sell at anything approaching their original price. Beyond the financial toll, there is the psychological weight of living in a building that is known to be sinking and tilting. Imagine going to sleep each night, high up in a tower that you know is leaning, that you know has been settling into the earth, and wondering what the future holds, whether the problem can be fixed, whether your home is truly safe. The uncertainty and stress of such a situation are enormous. The saga also spawned a tangle of legal disputes and finger-pointing, as the various parties involved argued over who was responsible for the disaster and who should bear the enormous costs of addressing it. For the residents caught in the middle, it has been a long and exhausting ordeal, a nightmare that unfolded in slow motion beneath their very feet. Faced with a sinking, leaning skyscraper, engineers confronted one of the most difficult challenges imaginable: how to stop and, if possible, reverse the tilting of an enormous occupied tower without making things worse. The efforts to fix the building have been extraordinary, a high-stakes engineering endeavor to save a structure that many wondered could be saved at all. The central idea behind the repair was to do what the original foundation had not, to reach down toward the more stable ground far below and give the building the deeper support it needed, at least on the side that was settling the most. The plan involved installing new piles driven down to firmer ground, intended to anchor the sinking side of the building, halt its downward movement, and ideally allow it to recover some of its lost position, reducing the lean. It was a delicate and complex operation, working beneath and around an occupied high-rise, attempting a fix that had rarely, if ever, been attempted on such a scale. But the repair itself proved fraught with difficulty and drama. At certain points during the work, the building reportedly settled and tilted even more, as the very construction meant to save it appeared, at least temporarily, to worsen the problem, forcing pauses and reassessments. The engineers pressed on, adjusting their approach, working to stabilize the structure and arrest the tilt. The goal was not necessarily to make the building perfectly straight again, which may be impossible, but to stop the dangerous progression, to halt the ever-increasing lean, and to give the residents and the city confidence that the tower would stand safely for the long term. It has been a monumental struggle against gravity and geology, an attempt to rescue a landmark from the very ground it was built upon. The story of this one tower is really a story about something much larger, about the treacherous ground beneath San Francisco and the profound challenges of building great structures upon it. Because this tower is not the only building in the city that sits on soft, difficult soil, and the lessons of its sinking and tilting resonate far beyond its own walls. Much of San Francisco, particularly the areas built on fill and soft sediment near the water, presents exactly the kind of challenging foundation conditions that contributed to this disaster. As the city has grown ever taller, packing more and heavier towers into these districts, the question of how to anchor them securely to the deep, stable ground has become more important than ever. This tower stands as a dramatic warning of what can happen when a heavy building is not adequately founded on the most stable material, a lesson written in inches of settlement and a growing lean for all the world to see. And there is a further, more ominous dimension to all of this, because San Francisco sits in earthquake country. A building that is already leaning, already stressed, already settling into unstable ground, raises serious questions about how it would perform in a major earthquake, the kind that the region is known to be capable of producing. A structure compromised by tilting and uneven settlement is not in the condition its designers intended, and the interaction between a leaning tower, soft soils, and violent shaking is exactly the sort of thing that keeps engineers awake at night. This adds a layer of urgency to the effort to stabilize the building, because it is not enough for the tower merely to stand on a calm day. It must be able to withstand the forces that this seismically active region can unleash. So there it stands, a gleaming tower of luxury in the heart of one of the world's great cities, and also, quietly, a monument to human overreach and the stubborn power of the earth. It reached for the sky, promised its residents a life above the city, and delivered, for a time, everything it had pledged. And then it began to sink, and to lean, betrayed by a foundation that did not reach deep enough into the difficult ground below, tilting a little more with each passing year in a way that turned a dream into a cautionary tale. The story is not over, and how it ends is still being written. The extraordinary efforts to stabilize the tower represent a genuine attempt to master a problem that once seemed unmasterable, to arrest the lean and secure the building for the future. Whether those efforts fully succeed, whether the tower can be made truly safe and stable for the long term, remains one of the compelling questions of modern engineering. What is certain is that this leaning tower has already earned its place in history, not as the triumph it was meant to be, but as one of the most striking reminders in the modern world that no matter how tall we build, how much we spend, or how advanced our technology, we ignore the ground beneath our feet at our peril. In the end, the sinking, tilting tower is a humbling lesson dressed in glass and steel. The people who dreamed of living in the sky found themselves at the mercy of the soil far below, and the whole city, and indeed the world, has watched as a modern skyscraper slowly leaned, a real and unsettling reminder that even in an age of soaring towers